different, didn't fit the frame. Told we'd never measure up, yeah, they called us by our name. But cracks let in the light, and struggle built the flame. Now we rise with purpose, never playing their game. We've got battle scars and stories, turned our pain into our glory. Ain't no shame in what we carry, this place, it's sanctuary. No excuses, no disguise. We are fire in the fight, we are storm in the sky. This is where the silent speak, this is where the real survive. We're not just prepping, we're alive. Welcome home, together we thrive. Strength they've never seen, it's in your mind, your heart, your hands. We're the ones who build a future when the world don't understand. Every voice is heard here, every story's got a stand. In this family we rise, side by side we take command. Truth is louder than the label, every weakness made us able. We're not broken, we're just rare, and we know this life ain't fair. No disguise. We are fire in the fight, we are storm in the sky. This is where the silent speak, this is where the real survive. We're not just prepping, we're alive. Welcome home, together we thrive. Refuse to hide. We don't fold, we don't run, we redefine. This isn't just a channel, it's a life. Oh, no excuses, no disguise. We are truth unfiltered, we're the power in the right. This is where the broken build, where the brave revive. We are one, we're unique.
When I was born, they had no hope for me, but I survived to build a legacy. I felt no love as I was raised. I felt broken, disheartened, and betrayed. But here I am, doing my own thing. I'll take a stand, I'll take a stand. I can do anything. You take one look at me and see a man with a disability. You don't know what I can be, you just take me for granted. So here I go, here I go. I'm gonna prove you wrong. Don't tell me no, don't tell me no. I'll show you I am strong. You think that I am disabled, I'm gonna show you I'm very capable. I was made fun of when I was in school. It broke my heart, I wasn't cool. I wanted to give up, wanted to end my life. I couldn't take the pain, couldn't take the strife. But here I am, living the dream. I got some friends, and they're on my team. You take one look at me and see a man with a disability. You don't know what I can be, you just take me. So here I go, here I go. I'm gonna prove you wrong. Don't tell me no, don't tell me no. I'll show you I am strong. You think that I am disabled, I'm gonna show you I'm very capable. I'm a survivor and that's a fact. It was a long road, but I'm not looking back. I am a winner and I choose to succeed. I'm stronger, my past made me be. I'm Zach and I'm just being me. I'm not disabled, I've got a unique ability.
At Unique Prepping, we're all about building stronger communities and preparing for the unexpected. Now, we're taking our mission even further by partnering with Stolen Spirits, a powerful initiative focused on raising awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Together, we're blending preparedness with advocacy, shining a light on the issues that matter most. Join us as we unite for a cause, inspire change, and build a future where every voice is heard and every life is valued. Unique Prepping and Stolen Spirits, stronger together.
How are you, Zach? G?
Good evening, everybody.
Evening, our prepping community, and welcome to the 37th installment of Unique Prepping's Community. Tonight's episode, we will be discussing the structure of community and why it is important. Your producer, host, and community member Unique Prepping, and with me are my really good friends and our community members Grumpy from Grumpy Acres Farm and Tag from Life Done Free. In the description, I put their channel links. Please go subscribe to them and keep this beautiful community growing. Before we begin, how are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. Been a decent week. Tired, lots of work. Weather's nice.
Yeah, I'm doing good too. Had a loss in my family here these last couple days, so that was a little bit hard. But building fence, and Zach, you have a very nice shirt. Just saying.
Gratuitous plug.
Yep. How are you, men, Zach?
It's good, and I'm doing good. Thank you for joining me on a crucial topic that I believe will help the future prosper. Taking on a topic that might not be flashy, but it is the very foundation of survival, endurance, and legacy, the importance of the community structure. Before you even reach for your first can of food, your first radio, your first solar panel or water purifier, you need to ask yourself, who's standing beside me? I trust. We work together. What holds us together when the world tries to tear us apart? Because at the end of the day, prepping is more than just gear. More than just bug-out bags and Faraday cages and alternative fuels. Prepping, real prepping, is about the people. About connection, order, unity, and purpose. Structure we build now, before crisis hits, is what determines how well we'll function during and after chaos. Without structure, even the most stocked bunker becomes a powder keg. Without structure, even a tight-knit family can fracture under stress. Without structure, survival becomes selfish, and selfishness will always weaken the group in the long run. This episode is going to dig deep into the blueprint of what makes a community thrive. Talk about role clarity, shared responsibilities, spiritual alignment, emotional resilience, and the powerful importance of making sure every person, not just the loudest, the strongest, or the fastest, has a purpose and a place. It isn't about creating a hierarchy. It is about creating a framework, a living, breathing system where order doesn't become control, and freedom doesn't become chaos. About striking that rare balance between individual talents and collective strength. Let me say this loud and clear, those with unique abilities are not liabilities. They're not less than. They're often the heartbeat of a healthy structure. They show us how to lead with compassion. Show us the strength of adaptation. They push us to think beyond physical ability and remember that prepping isn't just a physical task, it's a spiritual, emotional, and psychological journey. No structure is truly complete unless it reflects the full spectrum of human experience and contribution. As we dive in today, I want you to picture your own version of a prepared community. It's just your household. It's your neighborhood. Maybe it's a growing online family that's learning, training, and growing together like this one right here. Ask yourself, do we have order? Do we have leadership and accountability? Do we have a plan for disagreement, for burnout, for change? Building a structure that can withstand the storm, not just for a week, but for a generation, Think of structure as your invisible shelter. What keeps the winds from tearing everything apart? What keeps people grounded when fear tries to shake us? What keeps trust alive when resources get tight? What ensures we don't just survive, but survive with dignity, with love, and with the kind of strength that multiplies instead of divides? This episode is going to ask hard questions. Questions about how we define leadership, how we solve conflict, how we deal with ego, and how we protect the peace from within so we can face anything from without. We're going to challenge each other to not just prepare for the collapse of man's systems, but to prepare for the rebirth of something greater, something God-centered, people-powered, and rooted in love, not fear. Take a deep breath. Grounded. Your mind open and your heart stretch. Because building a strong structure isn't just a physical act, it's a spiritual one. Declaration that we are not alone, that we believe in each other, and that we're willing to fight for a future worth living in. As always, I'm grateful to each and every one of you who shows up, not just to listen, but to build, to share, and to walk this road together. Have anything to add before we start?
Yeah,
Thanks
no, I think it's
for
going to be
people.
interesting. Go ahead,
I
G,
said-
sorry.
Thanks for coming, people. That pretty much summed it up. Great show. See you guys later.
Grumpy's got to pee.
Nope, I don't have anything to add. That was a good introduction.
Question number 1. What foundational values must a strong prepping community be built upon, and how do we hold each other accountable to them without falling into division or hierarchy?
Tag, why don't you field this one first?
Okay. So it might be a little bit different than a lot of people, but I'm going to dissect this question, a little bit. And so you talk about the first couple words, foundational values. So first of all, I don't think that a community that every member has to share the exact same values. I mean, there's going to be some commonalities to that. When you talk about how do we hold them accountable, this is actually a very interesting thing to me. I want to be around a community, that loves each other, that trusts each other. I mean, I think everything's built upon trust. I want to be around a community that does their part plus a little bit. I want to be around a community where someone else's burdens are burdens that I share as well. And so when you talk about holding other people accountable, the truth is, and guys, I've been in business for years and years and years and years and years. It's almost impossible. The best way to do it is to hold yourself accountable, to expect more of more of yourself than you expect of other people inside of your community. Hold yourself to a higher standard. And what's beautiful is if you get 10 or 12 or 15 people doing this exact same thing, it's a beautiful thing. It's about shared ideology to me, and not ideology like, political ideology, but the ideology of community, right? Self-accountability is always superior. And so I think the more we push self-accountability, the less you have issues with the words that you used in here, division and hierarchy. People naturally, I think, want to click up. And so based upon, a common like or a common dislike or whatever it is, but when the mission becomes so important that those interpersonal things fall to the side, when that day finally comes, you won't have problems with division or with hierarchy. That's what I think.
Okay. So the foundational values. Here's my comment on that. If we're looking at individuals and family units, I think good, strong family values are very important. And Tag's right. Those values, those values that you have and your family has needs to translate to the larger picture. Another thing, I think this is really important, and I've come to realize that a lot of people think that they're pointed in the same direction, and they're really not. I think everybody has to understand why they're doing it, and everybody has to. It doesn't necessarily have to agree 100% on it, but you need to understand why you're doing something. and what's the important part and what's just ancillary or a result of whatever that main goal is, right? And people may not understand it going in, but you should be able to paint a picture of it or explain it to a degree that people can come to an agreement on it. For my case, it's liberty. That's the reason why I'm in community is because of liberty, freedom tempered by morals and ethics, and everything else, the sustainability, the food independence, the community. That's all an outgrowth of that searching for liberty and taking action to move that direction. And as far as the division and the hierarchy go, people are shitty and it's going to happen whether you want it to or not. Right. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a later question, but it's going to happen, and just understand that it's going to happen. So I've got this, I'm a believing Christian, right? So I've got some foundational core beliefs that in my opinion, you have to believe these things in order to consider yourself a Christian. Everything else, anything that's not in those core foundational beliefs, those aren't deal breakers. All the stuff that's ancillary to salvation and the resurrection, all that, those aren't deal breakers. And the same thing goes for community. You can have people that are they believe the different things about the community, but it's like a bunch of ships. As long as you may not be heading towards the same port, but you're heading towards the same island, right? And that island is community. So that's how that goes.
What I mean by the shared ideology of community, that even with a whole bunch of different beliefs, and you know that G and I have talked about these things a million times, but I talk all this time about trying to manage a bunch of pirates. And at the end of the day, I think what G said there's exactly right. As long as we're all headed roughly in the same direction, we all have a lot of the same goals. But I think you bring up a great point about understanding where you're going, and that's so hard to get common ground on that. I mean, that, G. We've been down that road 100 times. Right? Mm-hmm. I think that collective idea of this is where we're going is what builds self-accountability, and that self-accountability is way stronger than anything I can do to somebody to hold them accountable. I've told people this in business for years, that with the right run company, with the right culture inside of a company, you don't even need managers anymore. You don't need them because people are self-accountable. The only reason you have managers is to babysit, right? Is to hold people accountable. And if you can create that right structure, you don't need any of that. And so I would challenge and say, if you created that right culture inside of a community, you wouldn't need any of that structure either.
Here's my standard. This, and actually I got this from Mr. Spags. But here's my standard: my wallet, my life, and my wife. That's what I'm looking for in a community. Can I trust people in the community with my wallet? Can I trust people to have my back and have my life, either directly or by not putting my life in danger? Or can I trust them? And finally, can I trust them with my wife and my family after I'm gone? And that's what I'm looking for. And I'm going to be completely honest. There are people in this community that all three of those things hold true. There are other people that are working their way up the ladder just because I don't know them well enough yet. But that's my standard. That's what I'm looking for beyond knowing what we're doing.
Yeah. Gee, I think this is important. You said that, it's kind of a spectrum. And at the end of the day, you don't know everybody, and they're all at different phases, all at different levels, all at, those different things as you talk about working their way up the ladder. But I think if we set the standard as from day one, I have to trust you with my life, my wallet, my wife, you're going to have a super hard time building any kind of community.
You won't be able to.
Right. And be the change. Someone said earlier in here, be the change. And I think that is really what it comes down to. If you can be a tiny bit selfless, do your part plus a little bit, and you get 15 people doing that, you'll have a thriving community. Absolutely thriving.
No, I am gonna take a different tact on the word hierarchy in that question than what Tag had.
Okay.
the one thing I've noticed through doing this and dealing with other prepper groups is people want structure, and a hierarchy. It's either gonna form by itself just because natural leaders will float to the top, or not float. That's probably not a good description. But no, they'll rise to the top like the cream, and people will follow them just because they're natural leaders. But another side of that is people will try to form governance. And I'm going to be completely honest. There's been some discussion about governance in our community, and I was against it. I let everybody know that I was against it, but a majority of the people wanted to do it, so I jumped in with both feet, and you know, it's taking form. Let's just put it that way. I don't know. I think you'd agree with me. It's kind of nebulous, right? It's a nebulous thing right now, but it's taking form, and it's just human nature. It's not anything. It's not anything bad about anybody. It's just human nature.
Yeah, I think that it's a challenge, because how do you create? How do you make ground? Right? How do you be productive? How do you reach your goals? How do you do those things and yet have no rules? Right? And I'm with you. I'm anti all of those things too. And I don't want any rules. And I'm probably not going to vote for anything like that removes any of that kind of sovereignty. However, if we could figure out a way, if communities could figure out a way how to push the string in the same direction, you would certainly be more effective.
Oh yeah. Well, and I'm an advocate of the New England Town Hall. Seriously, I'm an advocate of that. So it's not like I'm anti-governance. It's just I want it done right, because I know the governance and governments are only good for one thing, and that's growing their power. Period. That's all they're good for. And that's all they will try to accomplish. Best of intentions, whatever. It happens.
Yeah, but isn't governance through voluntarism the ultimate answer? Because the problem I think you run into is that when you don't have any kind of, hey, let's get together and push the string the same way, then the same 4 people do all the work all the time. You don't come up with some way to get through that.
10% of the people are going to do 90% of the work all the time. It's our adult life. That's the way it's been. And it's just it is what it is. But you understand it, and this is one of the reasons. This is one of the reasons why I understand Prepper Mag's Mutual Assistance Group. For anybody that doesn't know, I'm not a big proponent of those, because of the way they're structured. You almost need governance. Just you need that hierarchy in a group like that. Whereas a community like what has I'm not going to say we built it. It kind of evolved. More than was built. But the community here, is not built. There's no need for that type of structure in our community, right? And it will develop on its own.
Zach, what do you think?
Strong prepping community begins with trust. The kind of trust that's shallow or temporary, but the kind that is earned, nurtured, and tested over time. It becomes the glue that holds people together in moments of uncertainty. Without it, fear takes the driver's seat, and suspicion rots the roots from within. Any high-stakes situation, the ability to trust one another, to follow through on commitments, to stand in solidarity during chaos, to have faith that your neighbor will have your back, is not just comforting. Essential. But trust isn't passive. It requires honesty, consistency, and vulnerability, especially when stakes are high and resources are low. Another foundational value is humility. Prepping community, humility creates space for listening. Reminds us that no one knows everything, and that each member brings something valuable to the table. Humble community does not idolize a single leader, nor does it ignore the quiet voices in the group. Instead, it encourages contribution from all directions. Humility is what allows someone to admit when they're wrong, to defer to another person's strengths, and to accept correction without defensiveness. It's humility that transforms prepping from a survivalist mindset into a cooperative effort rooted in mutual respect. Service must also be a core value. Prepping community cannot thrive if each member is only looking out for themselves. Service, in this context, doesn't mean martyrdom, it means seeing your role in the greater system. It means stepping up when someone is down, offering your skills even when it's inconvenient, and sharing your abundance instead of hoarding it. Service creates interdependence, which is a far stronger structure than independence ever could be. Through service that relationships deepen, and that people begin to understand the value of what they can give, not just what they need. Another value is consistency. When everything in the outside world is unpredictable, consistency inside the community provides a stabilizing force. It means showing up, doing what you say you'll do, and establishing routines and systems that people can count on. It's not about rigidity, it's about reliability. Consistency builds trust, and it communicates to others that they are not alone in their preparedness journey. Member of the community is consistent, they become an anchor for others. That sense of reliability becomes part of the emotional resilience of the group. Passion is a value that must never be underestimated. Prepping can sometimes focus heavily on logistics, tools, and resources. The emotional and spiritual health of the group matters just as much. Passion allows us to see when someone is struggling, even if they're trying to hide it. It softens the sharp edges of survival. Passion drives us to check in on each other, to forgive mistakes, and to keep grace alive in the midst of stress. Compassion that stops us from becoming hardened and selfish. Structured community, compassion ensures that no one is left behind simply because they struggle in ways we don't understand. Integrity plays a major role in building a strong foundation. Without integrity, the structure begins to erode. It means not cutting corners, not saying one thing and doing another, and not manipulating the system for personal gain. Integrity means doing the right thing even when no one is watching, and especially when no one is watching. Prepping community, where power dynamics can quickly shift, integrity prevents corruption. Maintains fairness and allows decisions to be made from a place of honesty and transparency. Integrity is shared across the group, it removes the need for micromanagement and keeps everyone accountable to a higher standard. Whether it's in God, in a higher purpose, or in the spirit of unity, must also be a cornerstone. Faith binds people beyond circumstance. Gives direction when the path is unclear and strength when the journey is long. For many, it's faith that reminds them why they prepare, not just to survive, but to serve, protect, and build a better future. Faith can unify people across backgrounds and help maintain a moral compass in difficult times. Rooted in the Word, faith offers a framework of accountability that transcends personal opinion and aligns the group with eternal principles of righteousness, justice, and love. Communication is another key value. Without open, honest, and respectful communication, misunderstandings fester, conflicts grow, and unity crumbles. Community must be able to talk through challenges, listen without interrupting, and approach disagreements with the goal of resolution rather than domination. Communication allows for clarity in decision-making and ensures that every voice has space at the table. Through communication that values are expressed, boundaries are set, and goals are defined. High-pressure scenarios, the ability to communicate clearly and quickly becomes a life-saving asset. Accountability cannot exist without mutual understanding. People must know what they're accountable to. This is why a shared set of values, agreed upon by all, is so important. Accountability is not about punishment, it's about growth. About gently correcting one another when we drift off course, and doing so in a way that strengthens rather than shames. The goal of accountability is restoration, not humiliation. Requires humility from both the one being held accountable and the one doing the holding. When done in love, accountability builds trust rather than resentment. Quality is essential in preventing hierarchy from corrupting the structure. Every person in the community has value, not based on status, strength, or popularity, but based on their humanity and their willingness to serve. Roles may vary, but worth does not. Quality does not mean everyone does the same thing, but it does mean everyone's contribution matters. Community rooted in equality sees no one as disposable. Exists the temptation to idolize the charismatic leader or to exclude the quiet worker. Doing so, it protects against pride and division. Flexibility is vital in adapting to change. Plan survives contact with the unknown. Structured community must be ready to bend without breaking. This means that roles might shift, needs might evolve, and new people may join while others leave. Flexibility ensures that the structure doesn't become brittle. Allows for new ideas, fresh perspectives, and creative problem solving. Flexible group is more likely to survive because it's not rigidly dependent on one system or one way of doing things. Respect must be present at every level. Respect means valuing someone's time, effort, voice, and presence, even when you disagree with them. Respect helps keep conflict from becoming toxic. Encourages patience in communication and peace in disagreement. Prepping community, where tensions can rise due to stress or scarcity, respect acts as a buffer that keeps the structure from imploding. Reinforces the idea that we are not just survivors, we are stewards of each other's dignity. Wisdom is a long-term value that guides decision-making. Every choice is about what works in the moment. Some are about what builds for the future. Wisdom teaches us when to speak and when to stay silent, when to act and when to wait. Comes from experience, from prayer, and from listening deeply. Wisdom prevents reactive decisions that can damage relationships or waste resources. Community led by wisdom will grow stronger with time, because it builds with vision, not just reaction. Transparency strengthens accountability and prevents secrecy from sowing division. Leadership is transparent, people feel included. When decisions are made openly, people feel empowered. Transparency doesn't mean everyone has to know every detail, but it does mean that nothing critical is hidden in darkness. It means allowing others to see the process, not just the outcome. Doing so, transparency guards against control and cultivates trust. Love is the most important value of all. Without love, structure is just rules. Love is what transforms order into care, and leadership into service. Love is what compels someone to give the last of their food to someone in need. What drives someone to protect the weak, to listen to the unheard, to stand in the gap when others grow weary. Love doesn't mean we'll always agree. It means we will always seek the highest good of one another, even when it's hard. Prepping community, love is the invisible force that holds everything together. Without it, the structure is empty. With it, the structure becomes unstoppable. He out.
Hey, Tag. Remember when we used to come on here back when Zach was just starting this? Would you say he's kind of become a chatty Cathy these days?
Yeah.
He puts a lot more out there than he used to, bro.
Yeah. I think he's definitely become chatty Cathy. We can like give him a nickname, Cathy.
I mean,
that'd be good.
Zach.
Hey, there's a lot of things, Zach, you said in there, and a couple things that I wanted to point out. You talked about, skills and tools and resources. And, I've been telling people for years that, as you're building that team, you should be looking at attitude, commitment, and character in that order, way above skills, way above supply, way above all of those things. Because at the end of the day, I mean, if, someone with a good attitude, I can be around 100% of the time, no matter the suck. And if they're committed to the mission, I can be around them no matter the suck. And if a good character person, I can be around them no matter the suck. And so I would stress that. Also, I love what you said there, that without love, structure is nothing more than rules. I love that, because at the end of the day, we don't want rules. None of us want rules. We left that world to just come and try to create new rules. But I really, really like that. I'll take that away from this. I wrote it down. That's a really great saying, Zach.
Question number 2. In a collapse scenario, what roles do people with unique abilities play in sustaining the community, and how can we design our structure to ensure everyone's value is seen and utilized?
Can I take this one first? Is it okay?
Let's just trade off. We'll take the other one. You're right.
First thing I want to address is a collapse scenario. Okay. And what I'm about to say is going to sound extremely harsh, but it's the truth of the matter. And because the universe is a very harsh place. If you're talking about a full-on Mad Max zombie apocalypse, 1 second after collapse, it's going to be very hard, not only for people with unique abilities, but it's going to be hard for people with medical conditions like mine. It's going to be hard for people with physical problems. It is. It's going to be very hard, and it's going to be brutal. Because quite frankly, if something like that happens, I'm probably dead within 18 months to 2 years because of my heart. Right now, probabilities and possibilities. Is that a possibility? Yes, it's a possibility. The probability of it is a heck of a lot lower than a financial collapse in the country or civil unrest or something like that. So we need to, whenever we talk about this, we need to understand the different levels there. And as far as roles, people with unique abilities, it depends. I mean, that's the only answer that you can come up with that. I knew a guy who was paralyzed from the waist down. Guy was a wizard with numbers. In a survival situation in a community, he would make a great bean counter because he could run the numbers and he could do that kind of stuff. When I got my radio license, there was a kid that had very severe autism, and he had to be proctored through the test, and he was allowed to give the answers verbally because he could not put them down on paper. Kid had his ham license. Kid could run a ham radio. So it just depends. With that said, I'm gonna piggyback on something that you said in the last thing you did, Zach. I'm not sure I want to be if people in the community, if there's a family with special needs people in it, and other community members don't want them in there, but the family as a whole is beneficial to the community, I'm not sure I want to be in a community that would kick somebody like that, or a family like that, or a person like that out. I wouldn't want to be with them, And if everybody holds the same family values, even if somebody's bedridden and can't do a single thing and is what some people would consider a liability, they're somebody's family member and they're somebody's loved one. And if we can't have the compassion like you talked about to help them through that time and whatever that means, whatever that means. And it can mean different for different people, but to help them through the time, if people in the community don't want to let somebody like that in, I'm not 100% sure I want to be in a community like that, because what happens whenever I become a liability, right? What happens when I become old and feeble? Are they gonna give me water and send me out into the wilderness like the Native Americans did? So it just depends, and the structure, a family, your inner circle is a de facto family, So that's where I stand on that.
There's a lot good there. They say in business there's a butt for every seat. And I think that if you've got a great community, what that means is you've got a bunch of great leaders, not one great leader, a bunch of great leaders. And then that job is to figure out how to best utilize everyone's unique abilities and, unique talents. And you go down, you kind of go down that road. I think the thing that I would caution there is make sure you're doing it long ahead of time of some collapse, right? Because you got to be able to build that that trust, and then those people's knowledge. I learned stuff about our community members all the time that I didn't know. Like, I didn't know you knew how to do that, or I didn't know, so I think those kind of things take, just a little bit of time. But I think this is really more of a leadership question, probably, than anything else. Everybody, has something to offer, especially if you're involved in a community with their eyes wide open. It's very easy, and Garen can attest to this. It is very easy for people to point out the flaws of somebody and to look, I'll go even further, to look for the flaws of other people versus trying to find that love, which is why I loved your statement about love structure is nothing more than rules. I love that. Because if you search out with love, Zach, in your words, I think this problem, completely fixes itself. One of the things that's important, though, is that this is also a quality team member issue, right? That, most people want to play small. I'm sure everybody knows what I mean when I say that. They want to play small over the small interpersonal thing that's going on at any given moment. They got mud on my floor, whatever it is, whatever the thing is that pisses people off. And if you can try to surround yourself with shepherds, people who will call you on your shit, right? Good leaders, good community members. I don't think they would ever turn their back on somebody, even if they really didn't bring any value, right? Because by then you've built this whole thing. The final thing that I want to say is you use the word in your question, how do we design structure? I'm pretty anti-structure, but I'm going to rethink that a little bit based on your statement. Without love, structure is nothing more than rules. And getting everybody on the same page is important, but I'm pretty opposed to structure.
Yep, I'm gonna reiterate something that Tag just said, because this needs to be repeated constantly. People need to understand this, because it adds a urgency. You do not want to be building a community whenever things are falling apart. You want to build a community beforehand. And I hear people all the time, well, I can't, or I don't. Well, then can and do. It's just a matter of stepping outside your comfort zone and going out there and trying to build a community. Because if I'm telling you, personal experience, if somebody else won't do it, then you got to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Gregory says, is there a case that one person is in charge or a community discussion interaction? Well, I think every community is different on this. And I think there's community out there that probably need that single point of leadership. I can tell you that the community that I belong to, that's not the case at all. There's a whole bunch of good leaders, and they all lead in different points and on different things. Just depends on the topic, depends, on kind of what's going on. I'd much rather have the collective leadership than I would individual leadership, because at the end of the day, we're all flawed. Every human being is flawed, me included.
Well, and when you're talking about community, you need to understand something, that when numbers reach a certain point, you're going to have a leader. You're just because it becomes so hard to keep everybody pointed in the same direction. Just human nature. They've done study after study. You're going to form a government of some sort, and you're going to have some sort of leader. The caution there is, if somebody wants to be a leader, that's probably the person you need to look out for. Seriously. Again, that's why I'm a huge advocate of the New England Town Hall, because it's specifically made for small communities, and it keeps that community. How'd you put it? Community discussion and interaction. It uses that as its governance structure. So and after a certain point with so many people, and I think they did a study, and like it's like somewhere around 180 people is whenever the dynamics change the most. So, and eventually you get that big, it's going to change just dynamically by itself.
Well, I think that to your point, G, that leaders emerge. That's just how it works. Managers are appointed. And I think I would rather let nature just take care of that, and the leaders will lead, especially in the time of chaos or in the time of the moment, they'll lead.
Well, and being in the military, the highest ranking person isn't necessarily the leader. especially once the stuff hits the fan.
100%. Well, and I'll also stress to everybody in the audience tonight, if you can't follow, you can't lead. That's 100% true 100% of the time. So if you can't follow, you can't be a leader.
I've been a leader, and it's a heck of a lot more fun being a kingmaker than it is being a leader.
Amen.
A collapse scenario, the instinct for many is to prioritize brute strength, speed, or traditional survival skills. What often gets overlooked, sometimes until it's too late, is the incredible value that people with unique abilities bring to a community's long-term strength, resilience, and emotional balance. Individuals often come equipped with sharpened perspectives, unmatched adaptability, and a depth of empathy that cannot be taught. Time when the world is breaking apart, those who've learned to navigate life differently are often the ones who hold the most creative insight into how to rebuild something better. People with unique abilities often excel at problem solving, because they've spent their lives developing workarounds for tasks many take for granted. Resilience makes them critical in a collapse, where improvisation and out-of-the-box thinking become daily necessities. A person who's had to reimagine how to get dressed, eat, or communicate isn't going to panic when the grid goes down, they're going to start adapting in real time. Lived experience has trained them for chaos in ways most people aren't prepared for. With unique abilities also often serve as the emotional compass of a group. Presence softens hardened hearts and reminds others of what truly matters: compassion, patience, grace. When tension rises and fear tempts us to turn inward, their ability to unify people through emotional intelligence, perspective, and raw honesty becomes a lifeline. Often carry a wisdom that doesn't shout but whispers truth when the noise of survival grows too loud. Structure of a prepping community must be designed with intentional inclusion from the beginning, not as an afterthought or as charity, but as a critical piece of the foundation. Starts with redefining what roles mean. Too often, roles are measured by what someone can physically do. In reality, roles are defined by contribution, and contribution comes in countless forms. If someone has mobility limitations, sensory differences, or relies on assistive devices, that does not make them less capable of providing insight, stability, or skill. One way to ensure everyone's value is seen is by creating role boards or systems that categorize responsibilities by mental skill, leadership, emotional care, organization, communication, and creative planning, not just manual labor. Gives everyone a clear visual that survival isn't just about lifting heavy things or building fences. About planning gardens, coordinating communication, caring for children, teaching others, observing dangers, and offering counsel. Certainly, every ability has a place to shine. Training and preparedness drills should reflect this inclusivity. Someone with a unique ability needs a modified tool, communication method, or assistance protocol. The team should already be aware and trained on how to support it. By practicing together and assigning meaningful tasks to everyone, community members not only see each other's strengths, they come to depend on them. The shift from inclusion to integration, from accommodation to appreciation. Communication is another key element. The more people understand the daily lives and experiences of those with unique abilities, the more comfortable they are in making space. Workshops, open conversations, and testimonies allow people to shift their mindset from helping someone to collaborating with them. Also builds bonds that make the community feel less like a group of survivors and more like a family. Communication prevents ignorance, which in high-stress scenarios can breed exclusion, resentment, or fear. Leadership within the structure should be rotational and decentralized. It ensures that no one type of person becomes the default authority. Leadership roles are shared, diverse perspectives are naturally elevated. A person with a unique ability might not be able to chop wood, but they may be the best at conflict resolution, morale building, or organizing resources. Leadership isn't about volume or presence, it's about discernment, balance, and vision. Structure that uplifts all voices will lead more wisely in every storm. Spiritual roles matter too. We with unique abilities possess a deep connection to God, born out of adversity, prayer, and perseverance. Collapse, where despair and fear can easily infect the heart of the group, spiritual leadership becomes vital. Whether it's leading devotionals, offering prayer, or simply being a calming force when others are overwhelmed, those spiritual gifts become tools of survival just as vital as any knife or filter. Communication support is another structural priority. Someone in the group is nonverbal, hard of hearing, or speaks differently, then the community needs to establish universal systems, be it signs, codes, tech backups, or even walkie-channel adaptations, to ensure they are heard and understood. Same goes for those who process information differently. Slower processing doesn't mean lesser thinking, it just means patience is required. Patience can be the difference between frustration and insight. Must also remember that visibility matters. People with unique abilities shouldn't be placed on the sidelines of meetings or decisions. Presence in the core of planning and execution sends a message to the entire group: we're only strong when we move together. Your seat at the table, front and center, isn't symbolic. Necessary. The future we're trying to build must reflect the community we're trying to become, one that mirrors dignity, purpose, and spiritual maturity. Incentivizing empathy within the structure changes the dynamic as well. When community members are rewarded or acknowledged for assisting others, not with pity, but with genuine support, it normalizes service. The one who helps the wheelchair user into the garden bed, or who learns how to guide a visually impaired member through a building, is not just helping, they are growing. And in that growth, the community becomes more deeply woven. The role of teachers and mentors cannot be forgotten. Many people with unique abilities have mastered specialized knowledge. Some may know how to modify gear, navigate systems, or adapt tools to better suit real-world needs. Others might be artists, writers, memory keepers, or communicators. Collapse, preserving knowledge and passing it on becomes just as critical as harvesting food. Come the librarians of lived experience. Archivists of resilience. Storytellers who remind others of where they've been and what they've overcome. Community must also allow space for emotional processing. Collapse is not just physical, it's psychological. Those with unique abilities often bring a slower, more intentional pace to life that reminds others to breathe, to pause, to reflect. Slowness becomes a medicine. Helps prevent burnout. Makes the group human. Without it, the structure runs the risk of becoming cold, mechanical, and joyless. With it, the group moves in rhythm with reality. Above all, people with unique abilities remind us that preparedness isn't about who's the toughest. About who's the most faithful, the most loving, the most rooted. Show us that endurance isn't just built through muscle, it's built through patience, grace, and spirit. The structure of our community must reflect that truth at every level. Collapse, every person matters. In a community with real structure, every person is seen. Every person is needed. Every person is valued. Not just survival. Redemption. Rebuilding a world that reflects God's heart, not man's fear. It's the true purpose of preparing, to be ready for what's coming and to honor every soul that walks through it with us. Be out.
Yeah, your comments are getting much more elaborate over the years, Zach. Good for you, man. Super good for you. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to all of that. You know, I think at the end of the day, you're not going to win a battle with pacifism.
No.
But at the same time, you will win it if everything you did up until that point was love, and everything you did up until that point was compassion, and everything you did up until that point was trying to build trust and understanding and those kinds of things. I'll just leave that one right there.
You know, if you can't do that within your circle and your community, how are you going to do that with the greater community? How are you going to influence the greater community?
100%. I think it's also important to kind of note to everybody that, inside of a community we have a large community here. Not everybody's best friends, and it's okay. It's not the end of the world. That's not a big deal. Personalities attract to each other, and you get all these different things that go on, but we're all in it for the same reason. And you want to know if you're actually involved in a community, have a day where you're putting a barn up. You'll see. Right? Have a time come when your chicken house burns down. You'll see.
Yep.
That's when it matters, because the rest of it is all this other stuff. And there's people in the community that I'm just naturally going to be better friends with than others, but at the same time I love them all. And if they call me, I'll be there. And if they need firewood, I'll get them firewood. And if whatever it is, we'll figure it out. We'll get through it. And I think that's what community is. It's not 45 or 50 best friends hanging around a fire singing Kumbaya. That's not the reality of how it really works.
Cool thing about what Tag just said. The chicken coop fire was our homestead when we first moved in here. There were 7 families. I don't even think there were that many moved in here yet. Maybe 5.
Well, and I can tell you, there was 5 to be exact.
There was okay, so there were 5 families here, and everybody in the community stepped up and helped us. And if the same thing were to happen to somebody today, you would have 50, 60 people that stepped up. So that's the cool thing about building a community.
Yep.
No Quarter says, those who will help you without you even asking for help, that's your community. Yep. And they won't ask questions when it's time to bury the body.
Yeah. I would challenge that statement just a little bit, No Quarter. And how am I supposed to know they need help if they don't reach out and tell me they need help? One of the problems with homesteading is, man, you're busy all the time. I mean, you get up in the morning and you're kicking its ass all day, and you go to sleep. And sometimes days, G can attest to this. Sometimes days they're just gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, if someone needs a hand, they got to speak up and say, "Hey, I could use some help."
Yep.
Then I'll be there. Sorry, Zach.
Question number 3. How do we balance personal freedom with the collective needs of the group, especially when hard decisions must be made for survival or security?
That my turn, G?
Yeah.
The answer is you don't. There is no balance. I don't see any way around this question, because this is getting into a fundamental principled basically question. If the collective needs ever outweigh the rights of the individual, I think you've already lost. I'm not suggesting that you don't help somebody, but I'll be damned if I'm going to be dictated that I'm going to help somebody, right? If somebody calls me and wants me to help them, I will absolutely help them, but it will be of my accord. It won't be because it was, dictated this. I did not trade the master of the corporate world to come live to a master, some other master. I'm my own master. And, at the end of the day, I think that individual sovereignty piece should be a critical building block to everything. I would put it in front of everything, because if the individual is squared away, if the individual is sovereign, the collective group will be in a lot better shape. I would be opposed to any type of system that pulls from someone who did the right thing, who worked hard, who put up the right amount of food, who learned how to garden, who learned how to butcher, who learned how to be a blacksmith, whatever it was, who learned to go do it in favor of someone who didn't, and instead went on vacation and went to Maui and went and did all of these kinds of things. I would be opposed to that probably in every single format. What do you think?
I hate the term collective needs. It sounds so Marxist.
Yeah.
I hate it. And then the personal freedom. There's a concept called the willing servant. And that's if everybody in the community has that steward's heart, they automatically become a willing servant. You cannot, Tag's absolutely right. You not only do you not have the right to force somebody to do something like that, you can't force somebody to be charitable.
Right.
You can't. Right. Now, with that said, there comes a point when things get so out of whack that you have to be brutally honest with people and let them know exactly how things will fold out if they don't come on board with it. And I don't mean brutally honest like being mean to them, like cold hard-hearted like you were talking about, Zach. I'm talking in a filial sort of way, where you can tough love, right? Tough love sort of way. Case in point, you're in a community, and the whole idea is to have food independence and be able to weather a storm that happens. The first day of the storm, if you show up at somebody's doorstep going, "Hey, I don't have anything because I like Tag said, I went on vacation, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that," man, you're not going to get any sympathy. I'm not going to let you starve, but don't think that you're going to be at the same level as the person that was out there working their butt off for years, building a homestead and doing all this other stuff. Right. So sometimes you just got to be brutally honest with people and let them know, hey, this type of behavior, this is what this is going to lead to.
Yeah. But I think there's a principal point here, right, though, G? I mean, there's the individual sovereignty matters a lot. And I'm not suggesting that I wouldn't help my fellow community member who came to my gate and needed some food. I'm not suggesting that at all. What I'm suggesting is it will not be dictated to me. Right. Because I'm sovereign, because I am free. I'm not trading one master for another master.
Well, and my whole point about showing up the gate the first day is an outgrowth of that, because that's the next question that comes from making that statement. What happens when somebody does this? Because somebody will do this.
100%. And then furthermore, if the shit hits the fan and we're ever in that, the community will figure that out. We will amass together. We will collectively figure out what we've got. We will get a game plan and we will orchestrate that game plan. But again, G's famous words, it depends. There's so many variables in all of that, on how all of that comes out. The community will figure that out. But in the meantime, I'm not signing on to anything that takes any part of my sovereignty away from me.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
What do you think, Zach?
Balancing personal freedom with the collective needs of the group is one of the most delicate challenges any community will ever face, especially under the strain of survival. Freedom is sacred, deeply personal, and often the reason many choose to prepare in the first place. When individuals come together to weather a collapse scenario, those personal rights will inevitably meet the hard edge of collective responsibility. Key isn't to sacrifice one for the other, it's to create a structure that honors both while navigating the tension with wisdom, grace, and courage. Prepping community, freedom starts with choice, the choice to join, the choice to contribute, and the choice to stay. One should feel coerced or controlled. But once someone chooses to be part of something greater than themselves, they are choosing to invest in a shared outcome. Outcome, if it is to succeed, requires more than individualism, it requires interdependence. Interdependence means sometimes putting the needs of the group above your personal preferences, not out of submission, but out of love. Hard decisions arise, like rationing food, setting curfews for safety, or isolating a contagious illness. The group must fall back on the foundation it was built upon. Foundational values, agreed upon from the start, become the compass. Freedom is preserved through process. Every major decision is made through transparent communication, collective dialogue, and clear leadership rotation. Individuals are far more likely to trust those decisions, even when they sting. Structure allows freedom to breathe. Think of it like a trellis supporting a growing vine. Without the structure, the plant collapses in on itself. With too much rigidity, it can't stretch toward the sun. With the right support, the vine grows wild within order. This is what a healthy community does. It provides the boundaries necessary for survival while still encouraging each individual to grow, contribute, and flourish. Rules, in this context, are not fences. Guardrails protecting freedom from becoming chaos. Balance also comes from representation. Individuals know they have a voice in the decisions being made. They are more likely to surrender some of their autonomy in moments when the group's survival demands it. Council or rotating leadership team includes a mix of ages, abilities, genders, and perspectives. No one feels left behind. Inclusivity fosters buy-in. People don't feel ruled over, they feel partnered with. Partnership builds unity even when agreement isn't universal. Discipline and consequences must also be handled with wisdom. Must be accountability, but not tyranny. Someone breaks a group standard, hoarding, stealing, threatening others, there must be clear, consistent, and compassionate consequences already laid out. Community can't afford to let behavior that threatens its survival fester. Also can't afford to become a police state. Goal is restoration, not humiliation. Balanced community always seeks reconciliation before rejection. Flexibility plays a powerful role in maintaining both freedom and unity. Because a rule or structure works for a season doesn't mean it works forever. Group must be willing to re-evaluate systems as circumstances shift. The food supply grows and rations loosen. Maybe curfews change with the seasons. Willingness to adjust proves that freedom hasn't been buried, it's been entrusted. People are more likely to trust a structure that evolves with wisdom than one that fossilizes in fear. Education and spiritual grounding are necessary to prevent division. Members understand why decisions are being made, based on scripture, safety, and stewardship. They are less likely to rebel emotionally. The spiritual principles behind sacrifice, unity, and love helps people accept temporary hardship for long-term gain. Finding the group of God's word and his examples of servant leadership softens hearts hardened by stress. Freedom without faith becomes selfishness. Faith without freedom becomes oppression. Together, they form a compass that can guide even the hardest decisions. Also important to protect spaces for individual expression. Whether it's through art, journaling, prayer, or solitude, people must feel like they are more than cogs in a survival machine. Personal freedom doesn't only mean decision-making, it also means being able to rest, reflect, and recharge. Healthy prepping community should always make room for the emotional, creative, and spiritual life of its members. Space isn't just a luxury, it's a survival tool for the soul. When conflict arises between personal freedom and group need, and it will, those moments must be approached with deep discernment. There will be no perfect solutions, only hard choices made in prayer, love, and truth. Sometimes one person will be asked to give up more than another. Sometimes a decision will protect the many but wound the one. In those moments, the community's character will be tested. That structure was built with equity, grace, and foresight. It will bend, but it won't break. Freedom is not the enemy of unity. The real enemy is pride, fear, and the desire to control. Prepping community that leads with humility, listens before reacting, and roots itself in mutual respect will find ways to uphold freedom even in the face of dire decisions. Won't always be clean. Won't always be fair. Will be just. Justice, especially in the wilderness of collapse, becomes the backbone of both liberty and love. Ultimately, balancing personal freedom and collective survival is less about policies and more about hearts. Group genuinely values each individual, not for what they can produce, but for who they are, then compromise becomes collaboration. Sacrifice becomes service. Decisions become holy moments. Freedom, in its truest sense, becomes something shared, not surrendered. In the end, it's not about choosing one over the other. It's about building a life where personal freedom and collective responsibility walk hand in hand, where both are protected, respected, and refined in the fire of community. When that balance is found, the group won't just survive collapse. Rise from it with strength, purpose, and unity forged in the hardest of times. Be out.
Yeah, I think the one comment I would make to that is, and I know this is true for pretty much everybody in our community. We often do things for the betterment of the community, but not because it's dictated. It's about being empowered, right? It's about being committed to the process and being smart enough to recognize that sometimes is that because the community flourishes, all flourish as a side effect, of that. But I would strongly encourage, again, people to understand the difference between sovereignty and collectivism. And collectivism will fail 100% of the time. It has to start with sovereignty. Question number 4.
Question number 4. What systems should we have in place to address internal conflict, burnout, or emotional trauma within the community before they threaten the structure from the inside?
My turn. Okay, so I'm going to backtrack just a second because I want to set something up before I answer this question. Okay, at the beginning I talked about liberty, and the word freedom, personal freedom, and sovereignty have been thrown about quite often in this conversation. That's not fair. They've been used a lot in this conversation. All right, and we need to get something straight. The whole reason why I lean on liberty and the definition of liberty is because when you start talking about personal freedom, and freedom is man's ability to do as he pleases. All right. So and liberty is defined as freedom tempered by morals and ethics. So if you have somebody in your group that has personal freedom that aren't grounded in morals and ethics, that's where the problems start coming in. And sovereignty is supreme and ultimate power. Right? That's the textbook definition of sovereignty. And you have personal sovereignty, but with morals and ethics and trying to live a life of liberty, that's how you temper that sovereignty and become that willing servant that I was talking about. Because you see a need in the community, and if it's not being addressed, you step up and do it. You step up and provide an opportunity. Now, if people take advantage, people may not take advantage of an opportunity that you provide. That's not your problem. It can irritate you, and it does irritate you. I'm not going to lie. But again, you can't force somebody to do this stuff, And getting on to the question, there's a lot of moving parts there. There's a lot of moving parts. And my basic answer to this is, the internal conflict, the burnout, and the emotional stuff. The sovereignty of having my own property is how I deal with that. Because I have been told in private that sometimes I come off as kind of an a-hole when I'm addressing people, because I keep my mouth shut until it irritates me to the point where I can't keep my mouth shut anymore. And then I just basically say what's on my mind. Right. So having that sovereignty allows me to step back, get some space, collect my thoughts, even after I've blown up, collect my thoughts, and then approach it when I'm ready. And so that's why, again, this is why I prefer a community like what we have over a mag, people that are cohabitating on a bug out property and all that. There's so many moving parts there that you describe in this that can cause problems. Now, burnout is a huge thing. Community events go a long way to taking care of that. And when I say community events, I don't mean just work days where everybody comes over and you bust your ass. I mean days where you do nothing. You just get together and fellowship, break bread together. That goes a long way to taking care of burnout. Emotional trauma. This is a stickler. This one, it's so easy to, in the effort of trying to help somebody, to cause more harm inadvertently. You don't mean to, telling somebody to rub some dirt on it may not be the right answer. And this is why I'm an advocate of everybody in the community at least understanding mental health issues. You don't have to be a doctor or a social person, but you need to at least have an understanding of them. Having a qualified social, not social worker, but somebody with empathy and understands this stuff really well in the community is just as important as having a mechanic or a doctor or something, because it's going to happen, especially if a collapse happens. There's emotional problems in everyday life, and in the event of a collapse, it's going to be on steroids. They're going to be on steroids, right? And that's how you do it. And it's from experience, stuff is going to fester to the point where it does cause problems. No matter how hard you try to keep that from happening, it's going to happen. And again, you deal with it in your own personal way. Mine is to separate myself for a little bit. Other people like diving in head first. Tag, what do you think about that?
You want to answer this? Do you want to address this statement down below first before I go?
Oh, okay. Hang on. Let's see. Grant Baker's phone. I have one problem with what you said. Who is morals and ethics? Who is the one to say something is moral and ethical? You, the other person, Joe Blow from Timbuktu. Well, here's the deal. No, Coral. The United States is built, whether you're a Christian or not, the United States is built on Christian morals and ethics. And if we can't agree to a baseline of proper behavior, the one thing about the Ten Commandments and a lot of the teachings of Jesus, whether you're a believer or not, they are good rules to live by. Sleeping with your neighbor's wife is not conducive to a good community. Stealing their stuff is not good for a community. Lying to others is not good for a community. And there are cultures out there, there are religions out there where that is part and parcel of what they do. And this is going to upset people. Tag and I have had disagreements on this. There are people from certain cultures and people from certain religions that I do not want to associate with, because their morals and ethics, as spelled out in their book or in their beliefs or their culture, are 180 degrees opposite from mine. And we will not be compatible. Let's put it that way. All right. So I'm not dictating anybody's morals and ethics, but you'll know them by their fruit. And I'm not speaking to just Christians. I'm talking about people in general. You don't have to be a believer to believe in being, I don't want to say good person. That's not a right way to put it, but a decent person. Somebody that I can trust with my wallet, my wife, or my life and my wife, right? We don't have to agree 100%, but we should be in the same ballpark, at least playing on the same field.
Yeah, I think, and as G mentioned, him and I have had some disagreements on some of these things, which, by the way, so you guys know, is perfectly healthy. I love people in the community who will challenge me and challenge my thought process, because it's just what makes us all better, I think, at the end of the day. A couple things that were said I think I want to address here real quick. We talked about sovereignty being the supreme power. It is. It's the supreme power of my own life. I am the ruler of my life. I am the unquestionable ruler of my life, and I won't apologize for it. And I think it has to be that way in order for a community to function. I don't think you can focus on any kind of collective and as a primary, right? It can be a secondary, it can be something we also work on, but I am the ultimate ruler. The other thing, you talk about emotional trauma, which I think is super important. Guys, I cannot tell you how many people I know today, even some inside of our very own community, that are prisoners to their past. That from whatever experiences they had, whatever it was, they can't let go. They use those experiences to punish other people, right? They use those experiences to make excuses. A wise person once said that we're all products of our past. The trick's not to be a prisoner to it. And so some of these problems are self-induced. It's inside of us that creates the issue. With all of that said, I know this is going to sound like a broken record. However, sovereignty fixes so many of these things. Just like what G said, when there's a conflict, he can go home. You know, he can go home and he can think about how someone did him wrong. He didn't like that comment. Or maybe the other side, maybe we get a chance to contemplate a little bit about, was I being selfish there? You know, or did I have some layer of guilt or whatever it is? We get a chance to, you know, kind of take a step back. And I think that step back ultimately is what helps keep, you know, a community again together. Then back to a point we talked about a little bit earlier, is that this has to do with great leadership too. And guys, I'm going to tell you, Yoda has it right. We have to unload our baggage and grow. We do. And it's so hard, Yoda. You guys know how many times I've quit the community? I've never admitted this. How many times I went, we all do it. It's that you realize pretty quick, nope, we're doing the right thing. Nope, we're doing the right thing. We're headed in the right direction. Nope, because it's hard, you know? And so Yoda, I think that's a absolutely, you know, perfect step. Back to leadership real quick. When you can put a bunch of people together, the shepherds, when you can surround yourself with shepherds and you have good people around you, that leadership fixes so many problems. I'm not talking about appointed leadership. I'm talking about real leadership that understands. I'm sorry. Norquarter says, I own what I've done in the past. I accept that which I have done and will do. Would never change a thing, because you change one small thing and you wouldn't be who you are today. 100%. But again, the trick is to not be a prisoner. Right? I didn't have an upbringing, but you know what? It's no excuse. And I'm not suggesting this is true, but just because my dad beat my mom, doesn't excuse to beat my wife. That's not how that works. I'm a grown adult. And so again, I don't really think you need structure, Zach, and I don't think you need a process. You don't need this. What you need is people who give a shit. You know, people who want to grow beyond it, are willing to step outside themselves and go, dude, you know what? Grumpy and I, we've done this 1,000 times. I don't agree with you on certain points. You know what? It don't matter. I don't have to. Yep. You know, we just see it through two different eyes. So I think my answer is, you don't need a structure. You don't need those kinds of things. You need people who will give a shit.
Again, our disagreements are non-foundational.
100%.
We agree 100% on the foundations, and that other stuff is just ditters that gets in the way. Now, I want to go back to what you said about sovereignty tag.
Okay.
I am not sovereign. There's a higher power that is sovereign over me, but I have personal sovereignty here on this planet, and that is what allows me to be the willing servant. Mm-hmm. Because I understand that I am not sovereign in the overall sense. Mm-hmm. You know, when it comes to here, I am a steward, and my job is to be a good steward and have the sovereignty to be a good steward. Yep. Right. And that means that on my place in my personal life and in the community. So that's right. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah. Bird lady up there said one big problem is too many people want to be leaders. Guys, I'm going to tell you something. Anybody that wants to be a leader, you should run from. Yep. Because that job is no fun. There's nothing exciting about that job. It's something you step up and do when you have to step up and do it. But beyond that, I personally would much rather just be one of the guys. Just so I'd say it. But yep. Zach, what you got?
Internal conflict, burnout, and emotional trauma are not just side effects of collapse. They're inevitable challenges that, if left unchecked, can quietly unravel even the strongest prepping community from the inside. While most people focus on the physical layers of preparedness, food, water, shelter, true sustainability requires emotional and spiritual systems just as robust. Survival isn't just about lasting through storms on the outside. About outlasting the ones that brew inside our own walls and within our own hearts. One of the most critical systems to implement is a clear, consistent, and confidential process for conflict resolution. Agreements will happen. Personalities will clash. Boundaries will get crossed. Determines the health of the group isn't the absence of tension, it's the presence of tools to navigate it. Establishing a rotating council of respected, neutral members who are trained, or at least spiritually grounded, in mediation allows issues to be addressed early, fairly, and without favoritism. When people know there's a safe place to bring their concerns, they are less likely to explode in frustration or withdraw in silence. Communication protocols must also be taught and reinforced regularly. Active listening, expressing needs without blame, and setting healthy boundaries are not luxuries, they're survival skills. Every member should understand and practice these principles. Workshops, trust-building exercises, and weekly check-ins can help keep these tools sharp and front of mind. Conflict often escalates simply because people don't know how to talk to each other under pressure. Structure that teaches respectful communication is already halfway to peace. Burnout is another silent killer of community life. One wants to contribute. And the same few people are carrying the heavy load over and over again, whether physically, emotionally, or spiritually. Eventually something breaks. That's why it's essential to implement a rotating task system that balances responsibility fairly. One should be stuck cooking every night, guarding the perimeter every week, or being the sole counselor for the emotionally struggling. Carrying the weight of survival shows that no one is above rest, and no one is beneath service. Sabbath rhythms are not just for worship, they're for restoration. Same way God rested on the seventh day, our communities must intentionally schedule downtime. This includes daily pauses, weekly rest days, and seasonal retreats from high-intensity roles. Without this rhythm, burnout becomes inevitable. People not only recover, they thrive. Even in collapse, there must be time to breathe, pray, reflect, and simply be human. Emotional trauma will show up in subtle and overt ways. Some will lash out in anger. Others will isolate. Some will begin to question their faith, their worth, or their will to keep going. That's why emotional and spiritual care roles should be seen as just as vital as security, food, or communications. Designated members, trained in crisis response, spiritual guidance, or even just compassionate listening, ensures no one has to carry their pain alone. Through group devotionals, prayer circles, or one-on-one conversations, healing must be built into the schedule. Transparency builds trust. The leadership or core team must model vulnerability. Those in charge act invincible, others will hide their own pain. But when leaders admit they're tired, stressed, or spiritually struggling, it gives the whole group permission to exhale. Reminds everyone that strength isn't about pretending to be okay, it's about leaning into God and each other when you're not. Honesty diffuses resentment, prevents isolation, and deepens bonds. Support networks also make a huge difference. Creating small, accountability families, or buddy systems within the group ensures no one slips through the cracks. Subgroups can meet weekly, pray together, encourage one another, and be the first line of support when someone's struggling. Easier to be honest with a small circle than to wait until a full-blown breakdown requires leadership intervention. Prevention always costs less than crisis repair. Culture of encouragement can't be overstated. Full affirmations, handwritten notes, shout-outs during group meals, these things breathe life back into weary souls. Survival setting, where success is often measured by output or endurance, it's easy to forget the power of being seen and valued. A system that regularly celebrates effort, growth, and courage will naturally create a foundation strong enough to carry each other through dark moments. Also must train the group to recognize trauma symptoms, panic attacks, hypervigilance, numbness, depression, overfunctioning, or disassociation. These aren't moral failings. Natural responses to abnormal stress. The community to respond with empathy rather than judgment is key. If someone is reliving past abuse, mourning a lost loved one, or simply collapsing under the pressure, they need grace first, guidance second. Prayer and scripture must be central to the healing structure. When man's strength runs dry, God's word remains. Building a rhythm of group devotion, scripture study, and faith-centered reflection gives people tools to process their emotions through an eternal lens. Trauma becomes a testimony when seen through the eyes of God. Burdens become shared yokes when carried in prayer. Becomes purpose when laid at His feet. Physical outlets are also necessary for emotional regulation. Exercise routines, movement groups, dance, or even gardening can provide therapeutic release. Emotional pain lives in the body, and giving people safe ways to move through that pain with purpose helps prevent buildup. These activities don't need to be extravagant. They just need to be consistent, inclusive, and intentional. Conflict or trauma escalates beyond the group's ability to handle, there must be a final tier of response. It could mean temporary separation, rotating a person into a solo role for reflection, or, if necessary, removal from the group to protect the whole. Decisions must be grounded in scripture, prayer, and wise counsel, not fear or anger. Protection of the whole doesn't negate compassion for the one. Ultimately, the systems that preserve emotional and spiritual health are not reactive, they are proactive. Woven into the fabric of the group from the very beginning. Strongest communities are not the ones with the biggest stockpiles. The ones with the deepest roots in grace, humility, and unity. A group that honors the heart as much as the hands will stand long after the smoke has cleared. That's what survival truly means, not just enduring, but healing, growing, and standing together, even when the world breaks apart. Be out.
So I've noticed something with your answers, Zach. When you start talking, you're very mutual assistant group centric, and once you get that out of the way, you start speaking to the larger community. And I think it's good that you're addressing both those things that it transitions on. And it occurred to me while you were talking. I'm fine, especially for men in the group, are probably the two most worrisome words you can hear in a community, especially when the men in the group start saying "I'm fine."
Yeah.
I'm fine, by the way.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Oh, there we go.
Question number 5. How do we ensure that spiritual, moral, and cultural values remain rooted in the community structure, especially when outside systems collapse?
Well, it's my turn to go first, and of all of the questions, I would not go first. I'll start off with saying that it's questions like this where, for example, G and I will probably disagree on quite a few things right here. It's good and it's healthy, and it helps us go around. And so, G, I want you to know I appreciate your insight, and I appreciate you pushing me, and I appreciate me trying to learn and trying to be better. But with that said, does community members have to share spirituality in order to make it work? And I think the answer is a resounding no. The fact of the matter is, I could get along with a Muslim just fine. Don't expect me to kneel on a carpet because I ain't doing it. And if you're not affecting someone else's life, my life, I could care less. And in fact, I'll make sure that you have a minute to go do that if that's what you want to go do. So as long as, don't be a dick. It's not that complicated. Don't affect my life. If it's a Buddhist, fine. If it's a Hindu, fine. I don't care. If it's an atheist, fine. As long as they are respectful to allow Grumpy to pray Sunday morning or Sharpshooter to pray on Saturday. Whatever it is, as long as they're not an ass, I don't really think it's that big a deal. I think there's something else, that I think that's bigger, to all of that. I'm a big believer in mission statements, and that where you have a shared mission, and some of the things that we've talked about in our community are things like, perpetual sustainability, right? Individual sovereignty, collective cooperative security, those are the kinds of things I think you make as building blocks, and those are the kind of things you come and chase. The other thing is, if the only people you surround yourself are people with just like you're never going to grow anyway, right? And so if you never grow, I want those other experiences. And here's the other thing: if Christianity, if God is the ultimate, has all of the answers, then it will stand. And all of the other people that you got to reach out there by bringing in different types of beliefs and different types of things. I think at the end of the day, that respect is what will help with all of these things. If we respect our differences, if we look towards those differences as a strength instead of as a weakness, if we look for those things that we can find on common ground instead of just what divides us, those are the values I think I would search for, and I'll leave it at that. Grumpy, all you, boss.
So first off, I don't like the way this question is worded. I think a better wording for this question is how do we ensure that the community stays rooted in its core values? I think personally, I think that's a better question. Again, going back to what Tag just said, you know, if your foundational belief teaches that it's okay to lie to somebody that doesn't believe the same way you do, I'm going to be very wary of that person. Doesn't mean I'm not gonna kick them. If they come looking for help, I'm not gonna kick them out. I can be personal. I can be polite and personal to them, but I'm always going to be wary. And if your ideology and religion teaches that it's okay to steal from somebody if they don't believe what you believe, you're not compatible with the people I want to be in my group. If somebody comes to the door and says, I'm a Marxist, I want to join your group, I'm going to tell them, hell no. I will put my foot down and I will say no. They should not be in this group, because those core values are not compatible with what we have built our community on. So it's not a religious question at this point. It's a matter of somebody's stated core values, right? And if somebody says that they're a devout Muslim, I'm going to take them at their word. I'm not going to be like the liberals and go, oh, they really don't mean what they say. I'm going to take them at their word. If somebody says they're going to kill me, especially in a collapse situation, I'm going to take them at their word, and I will behave accordingly. All right, and that's how you keep the community going and keep it alive. You know, this is not a how do I want to put this? Being inclusive is not a suicide pact. All right. There are people that I do not want to be inclusive with. I don't want a pedophile in my group. All right. I don't want a Marxist in my group. The list goes on. All right. So, and how do you keep everybody? How do you keep the community rooted in its core values? Number one, fellowship. Fellowship, that you get to know people. It becomes much easier to like somebody and tolerate somebody if you get to know them and they're not actively working against you. Number two, I'm a huge advocate. In fact, I brought it up with the people that nominally put together the community meetings. I think we should have a 10-15 minute session every meeting and talk about some of the core founding values and stuff of the country, so that we understand liberty, we understand sovereignty, we understand being a willing servant. I think people need to be educated, because it became completely apparent to me over the course of several months that there are people in our community that have a Cliff Notes understanding of this stuff that it's out of whack. You know, and we don't, like Tag said, we don't have to agree on everything. You know, he and I have a huge disagreement about the conservation department and the deer herds. We have a huge disagreement there, because that's one of the few places where I'm willing to say that if government's doing it right, we should support it. All right. Too many of them don't, but that's a whole nother issue. All right. But yeah, so you know, education. education and fellowship are the two biggest weapons you've got that will keep a community together and on the same track. You know, and the reason why education is important, I'll just spell it out. If you don't know why you're doing something, you are very easy to manipulate.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy for somebody to get you to change your mind and change what you believe or what you say you believe. If you understand why you're doing it, then you're going to be forced to behave in a certain way. And if you're forced to behave in a certain way, you're going to understand why you're doing it. It becomes a self-licking ice cream cone at that point. Understanding leads to doing leads to understanding. That's all I got to say on that.
Yeah, well, I want two points that you started on that I want to start with. Hold on, Dana says that brings into the question of shunning deviance. That works itself out. I promise you, in a homesteading or prepping community, there is a social credit score. You don't realize it. It's not kept track of. It's not tallied. But I promise you, if you never show up to help and then you need help, no one's coming. That's how that works. So, as I put there, but I want to go back to Amy B's statement up there because I think it really, kind of talks a little about what you said. But when the Quran advocates beating your wife, as long as the stick isn't wider than your thumb, maybe there is room for other ideas there. Here's the thing, is that in this particular case, whether it was a Muslim beating his wife, a Christian beating his wife, a Buddhist beating his wife, a Hindu beating, it wouldn't happen. It would not be welcomed in the community under any circumstance. Mm-hmm. Any religion that says that that's okay. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I think that religious zealots take things to far extreme measures, not despite all of them. And so to me, it wouldn't be, that thing. One last point, G to you.
Okay.
Is that if you talked to me 15 years ago, 18 years ago, I believed that the United States of America could do no wrong. And all we did is spread freedom and liberty across the globe. I believed that the Republican Party was who we should be worshiping, and I helped several people, including governors, get elected. I spent a lot of time in that world before I opened my eyes, and so to shun somebody because they're in a different place than you are, I think hurts their journey to liberty when what we should be doing is helping them to their journey of liberty. I'll say it that way.
Okay. That's cool. And I'm the same way, that's one thing that everybody, at least in the core group, I can say with certainty. That's when I say core group, I mean the original people out there at the campouts, the original campouts and stuff. That's one thing that we all have in common is that we've had an awakening.
Yep.
All right. And when I say, again, I'm not going to trust a Marxist until they prove, unless they prove otherwise. I'm not going to trust them because my family's survival is too important, and especially after a collapse happens. If we're talking after a collapse, whenever it's a matter of life and death, yeah, that becomes real important.
I think to that point, I think in the event of a collapse, your standards go way up. And you become way more particular because you don't have time for the honeymoon phase.
Right.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and my situation. I didn't realize we bugged out till a year and a half after we bugged out. So, in as far as I'm concerned, I'm in that post collapse era right now. I'm further down that road mentally than a lot of people are.
Yeah.
So and again, I'm my standards have changed. I'm with you, man. July 23rd, 2023 is when I completely lost all faith in the United States government.
Yep.
Even Trump.
Yep. Even Trump.
That doesn't mean that I can't. That doesn't mean that I can't acknowledge good things that are happening.
Dude,
I don't trust it.
Politics, but it is the same thing, different color. That's all.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But again, different places, different understanding. And by the way, I have quit shunning people because of their political views that I used to shun.
Have you had an awakening, G? Are you born again?
No, I took your whole idea of helping people along You know, I don't talk politics nearly as much as I used to people. You know, I don't wear it on my sleeve like I used to. I do talk liberty and freedom.
Mhm.
I do talk about these core foundational things that that I call them the moving parts that make liberty possible. You know, the food independence, the community, the modern self-reliance. These are all things that flow out of what we're doing.
And No Quarter says that actually, I would say that once a collapse happens, your standards will automatically lower just for survival purposes. I would agree with that if you didn't do your homework before the collapse. But if you have a functioning community at that time, say time of the collapse happens over a long period of time. There's many events that go into it. But I think if your stuff's squared away, you become more and more picky.
Yep.
I guess we'll see.
I know I have.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I say stuff that people disagree with, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't live under my roof, so that's fine with me.
Yeah. Gee, there's been many things you've said to me that I laid in bed at night thinking about, considering. And that's good. That's what we're supposed to do for each other.
Kind of scary, if you ask me. I am a modern. I am a museum to poor impulse control and bad life decisions, or a monument, I should say.
Ensuring that spiritual, moral, and cultural values remain deeply rooted in the community structure, especially when the world around us begins to unravel, requires more than just spoken words or good intentions. Man's deliberate action, generational accountability, and constant renewal. Outside systems collapse, what's left is what we've built within, and what we've built within must be stronger than anything that's crumbling around us. We fail to anchor ourselves in truth, in faith, and in values that transcend the temporary. Our prepping will only take us so far. Spiritual grounding starts with daily practice, not occasional tradition. The Word of God must be written not only on paper but on the hearts of those in the community. It means having regular times of study, prayer, worship, and reflection woven into the rhythm of community life. Can't be treated like a side activity or an emergency backup when things get tough. It must be the foundation. Whether it's through communal devotionals in the morning, Sabbath observance, or teaching children biblical truths as they grow, the spiritual flame must be tended to daily. When God is placed first, everything else finds its rightful order. Whole structure isn't preserved through control, it's preserved through example. Leaders and elders must be more than organizers or protectors, they must be the moral compass of the group. Their actions, tone, decisions, and sacrifices will either inspire integrity or breed compromise. One thing to have rules, it's another to have a community that upholds righteousness with humility, love, and consistency. Accountability must come from a place of grace, not guilt, of conviction, not condemnation. Cultural values, especially those tied to heritage, language, tradition, and generational wisdom, must be actively passed on. It means storytelling, food preparation, rituals, and songs should be kept alive, not only during good times but in the midst of hardship. Culture doesn't survive by accident. It survives through intention. Community members should be encouraged to share their traditions, languages, music, and history, creating a rich tapestry of remembrance and belonging. Past must not be buried under survival. Must walk alongside it. Children play a key role in the continuation of values. What we teach them today becomes the foundation of the next era. Must be brought into the rhythms of prayer, justice, forgiveness, and hard work, not shielded from it. Should be included in spiritual discussions, shown the importance of empathy, taught how to farm and build and solve conflict. Collapse comes, they won't be able to lean on outside structures to teach them what's right, they'll lean on what they saw modeled in their own homes and within the community. Outside influences, even in collapse, don't vanish. Rumors, travelers, media remnants, or even rescued technology can carry in ideas that challenge or erode your foundation. Group must be prepared to discern. means being equipped with biblical understanding, strong doctrine, and a firm grasp on right and wrong. Everything foreign is evil, but not everything that shines is holy. Discernment must be taught as a skill, not assumed as common sense. It will allow the group to welcome growth without compromising their soul. Communal rituals should not be seen as outdated or ceremonial only, they are glue. Gathering weekly to break bread, to celebrate milestones, to mourn losses together, and to mark the passing of seasons is essential to emotional and spiritual continuity. Rituals remind the community that their bond isn't just one of necessity but of purpose and shared belief. Community becomes a living, breathing body of tradition, pulsing with faith that outlasts famine or fear. Scripture should not only be read, it should be lived. When decisions are made about food, shelter, punishment, or leadership, they should reflect God's standards, not the world's habits. Disputes arise, forgiveness should be the standard. When someone is in need, generosity should flow without hesitation. These behaviors are what set a spiritually rooted prepping community apart from a survivalist compound. Values must be visible. When outsiders witness your structure, they should be able to tell what kingdom you serve, not by your banners, but by your behavior. Music, art, and creativity are spiritual conduits and must not be forgotten. Collapse steals comfort, music restores peace. When grief becomes too heavy, art gives it expression. When faith feels distant, song brings it near. The community should cultivate its artists, musicians, poets, and dreamers. Work becomes the spiritual oxygen when fear threatens to suffocate the group. Creative outlets are not distractions from survival, they are anchors of the soul. Another way to keep values rooted is through covenant. Members of the community should, at some point, enter into covenant with one another, not out of pressure, but from shared conviction. It isn't a legal contract. Spiritual promise, to serve, to protect, to uphold righteousness, and to correct in love. Covenant adds gravity to commitment and sanctifies it. The absence of government, a God-ordained covenant becomes the spiritual constitution of the people. We also need memory stones, both literal and symbolic. These can be scriptures carved into wood, benches in remembrance of elders, gardens grown on sacred stories. The physical world should reflect your inner convictions. Landmarks become spiritual lighthouses when storms rage. Structure is shaken, the memory of where you've come from, and who brought you through it, reminds you to stay the course. Fasting, not just from food, but from worldly habits and attitudes, also trains the soul. Practicing seasons of denial, not out of scarcity, but out of obedience, helps to recalibrate hearts toward God. The more we deny ourselves for spiritual clarity, the less tempted we'll be to adopt moral shortcuts when pressure builds. Fasting people are a focused people, and a focused people endure far more than a fractured one. Ultimately, the structure must prioritize unity in Christ above all else. We'll all come from different backgrounds, with different cultural habits and spiritual rhythms. We can agree that God's word is final, that love must guide all correction, and that justice is not revenge but restoration, then we will stand even when the outer world falls. Spiritual alignment becomes our cornerstone. Lapse doesn't erase values. It reveals them. It doesn't take away who we are, it shows us whether who we are is strong enough to withstand the winds. Our prepping is only physical, it will rot with time. Our prepping is spiritual, it will carry us, and our children's children, into whatever comes next. He out.
You know, Zach, you used the word conviction there, and it made me think of something. And this is going to sound like a shameless plug for something, and it's not. I think it's pertinent to this whole conversation here. So our featured T-shirt on the Bonfire store is it's a pair of shackles, and it says, "You can't just wait until it feels like tyranny." the idea behind that is if it feels like tyranny, it's already tyranny. And if you're looking at building a community, you've got to have that personal sovereignty. You've got to have that liberty-minded mindset in order to build the community before the tyrannical actions and the tyranny starts. All right. If it already feels like tyranny, you may be too late.
Are we doing parting words? Is that what we're doing, Zach? Maybe.
Any final words for tonight's topic?
Yeah, since G kind of beat me to it, I think first, G, to you, thank you. I appreciate your insight as usual. We got to do it more often. I do appreciate it. Zach, thank you for welcoming me back in. It was a good time hanging out with you again. And again, you wear a really, really great shirt. Just saying. Parting words for me will be just to be intentional in your relationships, and go be present. Not everybody's going to get along, but go out there and be present. Show grace. Don't be a prisoner to your past, like we talked about tonight. And if you do those things, you will have great relationships. You will find those intimate places where very few people ever get to experience. And I think through that, we end up building great community. And so my parting words is be intentional.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. Community doesn't happen accidentally. None of this freedom and liberty doesn't happen accidentally. Community doesn't happen accidentally. I will say this. I found a YouTube channel called the 10th Amendment Center. And this guy, he does breakdowns of the historical events that led up to the founding of the country. And he talks about the Federalist Papers and the conversations that happened by the founding fathers and everything. If you want to learn about why we do what we do, this is probably, in my opinion, one of the best YouTube channels out there to do that. Because the guy breaks it down, he makes it very understandable, and he makes what is normally very dry history interesting. So the 10th Amendment Center is the name of the channel.
Excellent.
We talk about community. We're not just talking about a group of people living near one another. We're talking about a living, breathing body that moves with purpose, guided by faith, rooted in values, and bound together by trust. This episode wasn't meant to be a blueprint that fits every situation, but a heart cry to build something deeper than stockpiles and strategy. About relationships that are resilient, people who are valued no matter their skill or circumstance, and a foundation that can weather every storm because it's not built on sand. Much of prepping focuses on what's in your hands, your tools, your gear, your food. Just as important, if not more so, is what's in your heart. The kind of community you create reflects the kind of spirit you carry. That spirit is fearful, divisive, or prideful, it will break when pressed. But if it's humble, inclusive, patient, and God-centered, it will rise even in the ashes. The structure of your community starts with the structure of your soul. Never forget that a strong prepping community honors every member, no matter their ability, age, or background. One has value. One brings something unique to the table. The beauty of true preparedness is that it doesn't just protect life, it protects dignity. Design of your group should echo the truth that every soul is made in the image of God, and no one is disposable. Collapse comes, it will test more than your stockpile, it will test your patience, your grace, your willingness to forgive, your ability to carry one another when the weight becomes too much. These aren't just survival traits, they are the fruits of the Spirit. A spiritually rooted community will look different from the world because it operates with a different set of principles, ones that don't shift with every crisis. Unity is the safety net when your strength runs dry. The voice that prays over you when your own words fail. The reminder that you're not alone. A structure built on this kind of unity will not only survive, it will thrive. When people are poured into daily, when compassion becomes the standard, when scripture is written on the walls and in the hearts, the structure becomes something far greater than human design. Come sacred. There will be moments when disagreements arise, when trust is tested, when emotions run high. The answer is not to abandon each other but to press in closer, to create spaces for honest communication, accountability wrapped in love, and a willingness to sit in discomfort if it leads to growth. We can't wait until disaster strikes to build these systems. Have to start now, in peace, so they stand strong in chaos. All of this, never forget the power of prayer. Changes everything. Before decisions are made, before structures are drawn, before roles are filled, bring it before God. Community that prays together hears together. Discernment, protection, healing, and clarity come from above. When we are aligned in the spirit, our steps are ordered, and our foundation cannot be shaken. Let your community be one that reflects the kingdom, not the broken systems of man. Let it shine in its compassion, its discipline, its resilience, and its generosity. Become a testimony to others watching from the outside. Let it be the safe place your children will one day tell stories about, a place where people didn't just survive but truly lived, loved, and honored God through it all. Find anything unique prepping, visit the Linktree link in the description. Like, subscribe, comment, and share this episode with someone who needs encouragement today. If you're just beginning your journey or you've been walking this path for years, you are part of something powerful, something that matters. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to show up, stay faithful, and build with purpose. Love you all. Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap, if we faint not. Ephesians 6 verse 9 KJV. Stay prepared, stay unique, and God bless.
Take care, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
In a world full of noise where the fear runs deep, you've been fighting alone, losing sleep. But here we stand with a light, with a plan. Together we rise, yeah, we take a stand. Storms may come and times get rough, but you're stronger than the world thinks tough enough. We've got your back no matter how far. You're a fighter, a thinker, a prepping star. You're not alone, we're all in this ride. Unique prepping's here standing right by your side. So hit that like, let your voice be heard. Subscribe, comment, share the word. Check the gear, check your soul. Our sponsors help you stay in control. Prepared, aware, never outdone. We fight together till the battle's won.